No one in that locker room was prepared for what they were about to hear. Not the veterans who have been through championship runs and September collapses and every kind of pressure this sport can produce. Not the younger players still learning what it means to survive a full major league season. Not the coaching staff standing quietly near the back of the room, waiting for the usual post-game debrief to begin. Not even Dave Roberts himself, who has stood in front of this team through some of the most difficult moments in recent Dodgers history and who believed, walking into that room, that he had a reasonable understanding of what was happening with his team. Nobody was ready for what Mookie Betts was about to say. According to multiple sources with direct knowledge of what took place in that locker room after the game, Betts did not wait to be asked. He did not raise his hand or request permission to speak. He simply stood up. And when the room registered that he was standing, it went completely silent almost immediately. Because according to those present, there was something in his expression that told everyone in that space that what was coming was not going to be ordinary. He looked at his teammates. He looked at his coaches. And then, according to multiple sources who were in the room, Mookie Betts said something that nobody in that organization had heard him say before. "I don't want to hide it anymore." To understand the full weight of that moment, it is necessary to understand what the previous several weeks had looked like for Mookie Betts and for the Dodgers organization as a whole. The slump had been visible to everyone. The numbers told a story that was impossible to avoid. The batting average that had dropped to a level nobody associated with Betts. The at-bats that looked slightly off in ways that were difficult to precisely define but impossible to ignore once you had noticed them. The timing that had always been one of his most distinctive qualities as a hitter, that almost mechanical precision that made him look like he was operating on a different clock than the pitchers he faced, had begun to look inconsistent in a way that had quietly alarmed the coaching staff. Publicly, the explanations had remained vague. A rough stretch. A mechanical adjustment. The kind of thing that every player goes through over the course of a long season. Roberts had been careful and protective in his public comments, as he always is with his players. The organization had said nothing that would add external pressure to a situation that was clearly already generating enough internal pressure on its own. But according to multiple sources with knowledge of the internal conversations that had been happening within the Dodgers organization, there had been a growing feeling that the explanation being offered publicly did not fully account for what was actually happening on the field. And in that locker room, after that game, Mookie Betts finally told them why. According to multiple sources with direct knowledge of what Betts revealed, the confession began quietly. Not with drama. Not with the kind of emotional outburst that sometimes accompanies difficult moments in professional sports. According to those present, Betts started speaking in a measured voice. Controlled. Deliberate. The way a person speaks when they have been holding something for a long time and have finally decided that the holding is no longer sustainable. He told his teammates that he had been dealing with an injury. Not a minor discomfort of the kind that every player manages throughout a season without mentioning it. According to multiple sources, what Betts revealed was something considerably more serious. An injury that had been affecting his ability to perform at his natural level for a significant period of time. An injury that he had chosen to conceal, from the media, from the public, and according to those with knowledge of the situation, from most of the people inside the organization as well. According to those present in the room, the silence that had already settled over the locker room became even deeper as Betts continued speaking. He explained that he had made the decision to hide the injury because he did not want to be perceived as an excuse-maker. Because he did not want his teammates to feel that they were carrying additional burden on his behalf. Because the Dodgers were in the middle of a season where every game carried weight, and the idea of stepping back, of acknowledging that he was not physically capable of performing at the level this team needed from him, had felt, to him, like a form of abandonment. And then, according to multiple sources who were in that room, Mookie Betts stopped speaking. And he began to cry. According to people who were present, the moment Betts broke down was the moment the entire atmosphere of that locker room transformed completely. These are professional athletes. Men who have been trained, implicitly and explicitly, to manage emotion in public settings. To maintain composure under pressure. To process difficulty internally rather than externally. That is the culture of a major league clubhouse in ways that go deeper than any written rule or official policy. And yet, according to multiple sources, not a single person in that room remained unmoved by what they were witnessing. Several players, according to those present, moved toward Betts immediately. Not in a performative way. Not in the organized, choreographed way that emotional moments sometimes look when they happen in front of cameras. According to eyewitnesses, it was completely instinctive. Teammates who had been sitting across the room were suddenly standing next to him. Hands on his shoulder. Quiet words that nobody outside that circle could hear. According to multiple sources, Dave Roberts stood completely still for several seconds before he moved. And when he did move, he walked directly to Betts and said something privately that those standing nearby could not make out. But according to people who observed the exchange, whatever Roberts said in that moment visibly affected Betts. His shoulders, which had been tense and drawn upward the way a person looks when they have been carrying something physically heavy for too long, slowly dropped. The injury that Betts revealed, according to multiple sources with knowledge of the medical situation, had been affecting him in ways that were directly connected to the problems that had been visible in his performance. According to those familiar with the details, the physical issue had been creating specific limitations in Betts' ability to generate the kind of rotational power that defines his swing at its best. The mechanics that opposing pitchers and analysts had been noticing as slightly off were not the result of a technical flaw or a mental block or a loss of the instincts that have made him one of the best players in baseball. They were the result of a body that was compensating. Adjusting. Finding ways to compete at the highest level while simultaneously managing a physical reality that was making every at-bat harder than it should have been. According to multiple sources within the organization, the coaching staff's reaction to this information was complicated. On one level, according to those familiar with the internal response, there was immediate relief. Because the mystery that had surrounded Betts' performance, the question of what was happening to one of their most important players that conventional explanations could not fully account for, had finally been answered. The answer was painful. But it was an answer. On another level, according to those with knowledge of the situation, there was a more difficult emotion underneath the relief. Because it meant that Betts had been competing through something serious for weeks. And the people whose responsibility it is to protect their players had not known. Dave Roberts, according to multiple sources, did not sleep well that night. According to people close to him, he spent considerable time after leaving the facility reviewing everything he had observed over the previous weeks through the new lens of what he now knew. The at-bats that had looked slightly off. The moments in the field where Betts had moved in a way that was fractionally different from his baseline. The conversations they had shared in which Roberts had asked, in the careful way that managers ask, whether everything was all right, and Betts had told him, with complete sincerity in his expression, that he was fine. According to multiple sources, Roberts did not feel anger toward Betts for concealing the injury. Those familiar with Roberts' reaction describe it as something closer to a profound sadness. Because he understood, immediately and completely, why Betts had made the choice he made. Because it was exactly the kind of choice that the best players, the ones who define their identity through their ability to perform and contribute, make when they are faced with the alternative of stepping back. But understanding why the choice was made did not make the reality of it any easier to sit with. In the days following Betts' revelation, according to multiple sources with knowledge of the internal discussions happening within the Dodgers organization, Roberts began considering something that would have seemed almost unthinkable just a few weeks earlier. Moving Mookie Betts to shortstop. The idea, according to those familiar with the thinking behind it, was not born from desperation. It was born from a specific and carefully reasoned logic. According to multiple sources, Roberts and his coaching staff had been examining whether repositioning Betts defensively could serve two simultaneous purposes. First, it would allow Betts to remain in the lineup and contribute his competitive presence and baseball intelligence to the team without placing the same physical demands on him that his current position required. Second, it would open a positional option elsewhere in the field that could be used to strengthen the overall defensive configuration of the team during a period when every available advantage needed to be maximized. According to those familiar with the conversations, Betts himself had not rejected the idea when it was initially raised with him. In fact, according to multiple sources, his response was characteristic of everything his teammates had witnessed in that locker room the night he finally stopped hiding the truth. He said he would do whatever the team needed. According to multiple sources tracking the reaction across baseball media and fan communities, the story of Betts' locker room confession spread rapidly in the days following the game. The combination of elements, the hidden injury, the emotional breakdown, the protective instinct that had driven him to compete in silence, resonated far beyond the usual boundaries of a performance story. Because it was not really a performance story at all. It was a story about what it costs to be the kind of player Mookie Betts has always insisted on being. The kind who does not make excuses. The kind who does not ask for accommodation. The kind who walks into the lineup every day and competes with everything he has, regardless of what everything he has actually amounts to on any given day. And in that locker room, in the heaviest moment of his Dodgers career, his teammates finally understood the full price of that choice. Every single one of them.